charged with murder, the man accused of opening fire on a Taiwanese church congregation, and how his case is raising questions about identity and politics in Taiwan. The next generation, Taiwan tests its newest attack drone, drawing on lessons from the war in Ukraine. Not an accident. Reports say the China Eastern Airlines plane crash was deliberate. And we meet some of Taiwan's temple idols and a man who created them. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Betty Chen. The man accused of opening fire on a Taiwanese church congregation in the U.S. state of California has been charged with first-degree murder and 5 counts of attempted murder. Police say the 68-year-old Taiwanese American was driven by a hatred for Taiwanese people. The shooting has triggered a wave of condemnation and has led to questions about politics and identity both here and in Taiwanese communities abroad. Rick Glauert reports.
A community mourns Jon Chang, a Taiwanese American doctor who was shot dead in an attack on a church in California.
Dr. Chang was my husband's primary care doctor. He's seen me, he's seen my mother-in-law, he's seen our kids. And I just felt it was important to pay respects to him and to the folks in his practice who are grieving today.
On Sunday, a man opened fire on the members of the Irvine Taiwanese Presbyterian Church during a post-service luncheon, killing Cheng and injuring 5 others. The accused shooter, 68-year-old David Cho, has been charged with murder, attempted murder, and use of a destructive device. The state prosecutor is seeking the death penalty.
I think the intent in my mind was very clear, what was going to happen. And the explosive devices really scare me about what could have happened if the plan had been carried out as I think it was intended.
The motive flagged by US police is a hatred of Taiwanese, although Cho himself was born in Taiwan in the 1950s. The case has left Taiwan in shock.
我们正在密切地追踪本案最新的发展。我们透过各种的管道，随时跟我们的侨民来提供他们所需要的协助。同时呢，我们也促请美方要务必全力来保护我国侨民的安全。
The shooting and the motive behind it strike at the heart of Taiwan politics and identity. Neighbouring China insists Taiwan is part of its territory and has ramped up threats to take the country by force. Local news in Taiwan reports Cho was connected to groups pushing for unification between China and Taiwan. On Wednesday, a member of the independence-leaning ruling party, the Democratic Progressive Party, or DPP, spoke out against rising political extremism.
我们希望所有的激进派分子真的不要拿别人的生命开玩笑。
Taiwan society is divided. The younger generations are increasingly identifying as Taiwanese rather than Chinese. But many people here still see Taiwan and China as one nation, particularly those who can trace their roots to the people who fled from China to Taiwan during the Chinese Civil War in the middle of the last century. Reports suggest Cho has this heritage. Jon Chang is a lawmaker with Taiwan's major opposition party, the Kuomintang, which still favours closer ties with China.
追究他后续的背景，我倒觉得其实不是最重要的事情哈。怎么样去弭平现在的一个伤口，可能更关键哈。
Independence and the relationship with China have long been an issue for Taiwanese communities abroad, made more difficult in the information age.
在海外的华人往往因为他们接收到的讯息更是单向化，所以说在这个统独的态度上面可能更为极化。那在这样极化的氛围之下难保不会有这种激进分子。
Dr. Jon Chang's violent death has rocked a small immigrant community in the United States. But for Taiwanese at home and abroad, it's also brought out difficult questions about national identity. Karma Xu and Rick Glauert for TaiwanPlus.
TaiwanPlus's Rick Glauert spoke to Leona Chen, editor-in-chief of TaiwaneseAmerican.org, based in California. He began by asking her how the Taiwanese American community has reacted to the shooting.
I think among Taiwanese Americans, there is a lot of grief and shock at the moment, and I guess that manifests in a couple different ways. I think in a broad sense, the violence is agonizing even without detailed analysis of the shooter and why he targeted a Presbyterian church with a mostly elderly congregation. There's no politics or background that prevents you from sharing in that very human grief of vulnerable people in what is supposed to be a safe space being harmed with this kind of violence. I think a deeper layer of grief exists among those who recognize the significance of their Presbyterian church, where functionally pro-democracy aspirations could exist, but they were also informed and given hope by this theology of liberation. There are instances of Christian missionaries in Taiwan keeping pro-democracy activists safe when they were wanted for execution or questioning by the Chinese nationalist government. And I think the specificity with which David Cho, the shooter, chose that target is very chilling.
What conversations about Taiwanese identity has the incident sparked?
We often talk about Taiwanese identity facing a violent erasure, institutionally, diplomatically, in big and small ways. And this was unfortunately a very literal example of that. Taiwanese identity is daily conflated with Chinese identity, either by people who will collapse the differences out of convenience or disregard for the very different experiences of Chinese and Taiwanese, or more powerfully as part of the PRC's willful erasure of Taiwanese sovereignty and identity and self-determination. Taiwanese identity is a hugely politicized construction because claiming it or evoking it as a truth threatens the PRC's fiction that we are all Chinese.
What tension in the Taiwanese identity, and particularly in Taiwanese politics in the country, has this shooting revealed?
I think the shooting has revealed that the immigrating generation has not let go of a lot of the very legitimate and valid conflicts and resentments that they experienced while they were in Taiwan, or that their parents experienced while they were in Taiwan. It meets this moment in the sort of vacuum where misinformation and loneliness and isolation compound these frustrations, and that's, I think, what this shooting was an example of.
Taiwan has completed test flights for its newest military drone, which is called the Cloud Rider. The drone is being developed by the country's top weapons manufacturer and is being modified as details emerge from Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Jaime Okan explains.
This is Taiwan's newest military drone. For the past 2 weeks, the country has been testing it off the southeastern coast of the island. It's expected to play a valuable role in monitoring the activity of the Chinese military, or PLA. The latest version of this drone, known as the Cloud Rider 2, is being developed by Taiwan's top weapons maker, the Zhongshan Institute. They are modifying the drones to accommodate weapon systems like the ones being used in Ukraine in its conflict. Parallels are being drawn between the war in Ukraine and what Taiwan could face in the future if China invades. Taiwan's more powerful and giant neighbor claims sovereignty over the island and has not ruled out taking it by force. Taiwan has similar military hardware to Ukraine and is watching closely how the Eastern European country is using its weapons to fend off its much larger and more resourced neighbor, Russia. As these drones are expected to enter service soon, Taiwan hopes that this new technology will add to its overall defense capability. Damon Lin and Jaime Okan for TaiwanPlus.
The first stage of Taiwan's annual military exercises is underway this week amid rising tensions in the Taiwan Strait. This year's drills are designed to test the island's asymmetric warfare strategy in the event of an attack from China. The Defense Ministry says the training will be informed by lessons taken from the war in Ukraine. To discuss this, our reporter in Kavat spoke to Liangzhi Chen, an associate research fellow at Taiwan's government-funded Institute for National Defense and Security Research, or INDSR.
Regarding the asymmetrical warfare, Taiwan can pick up the experience of the war in Ukraine to use its small size but very mobile military to attack China's big, large-scale like naval vessels and armies.
I also hear that the Ukraine lessons is about fighting in urban areas.
That's correct. Well, actually, it's highly urbanized in Taiwan. So the case of Ukraine, especially, the battle in the urban area, that's quite important for Taiwan to develop its military strategy against China's attack.
The exercises will also focus on testing Taiwan's ability to combat cognitive warfare. How exactly will they do that?
We can see, the Ukraine side, they try to emphasize this is the war of justice. It is a just war. And on the other side, Russia is kind of, invasions. And we also can see that's also the war or the battle between democracy and authoritarians and autocracies.
So for Taiwan, does that mean that there will be this capability within the Taiwan military?
Exactly. I think that's quite important for, the defense side to promote its cognitions all over the world. And that will be kind of international propaganda to persuade the international society to accept our stance, to accept our rights, to defend our homeland, to defend our autonomy.
A China Eastern Airlines plane crash that killed all 132 people on board appears to be intentional. That's according to a report out of the U.S. The jet was flying from Kunming to Guangzhou on March 21st when it suddenly plunged into the mountains of southeast China. The Wall Street Journal has spoken to people familiar with the crash investigation. One person has told the journal that a Boeing 737-800 must have been pushed into its near vertical descent by a pilot or someone else who forced their way into the cockpit. The probe into the crash is being led by Chinese investigators, but U.S. officials are involved because the plane was made in the United States. Taiwan's legislature has passed an amendment that will pave the way for a new transitional justice office. The head of the Transitional Justice Commission, Chen Yufan, says it's a milestone in Taiwan's democratic development.
转会是一个任务型的机关，那我们任期到了，规划完成后，就移交将由这些部会共同来推动落实整个转型正义的工作。
One of the main goals for the office is to restore justice to people whose human rights were violated. That covers people affected during Taiwan's martial law era from 1949 to 1987 and beyond. The amendment doubles the compensation for families of people who died during the period to $400,000 US. The changes also make it possible to return confiscated property to the victims. Taiwan's COVID-19 outbreak is causing problems in the workplace. One of Taiwan's largest industrial groups says there is a nationwide shortage of over 110,000 workers. Many employees are being forced to quarantine or isolate, while other workers are staying home to avoid catching COVID. The Chinese National Federation of Industries says the situation is especially bad in the electronics manufacturing and precision machinery industries. Taiwan has adopted new rules to ease the strain COVID-19 is putting on hospitals. This comes as the number of new daily cases surpassed 85,000 on Wednesday. As of Tuesday, hospitals are only admitting 3 categories of COVID patients. Those are infants under 3 months old, patients with moderate to severe symptoms, and patients whose doctors say they need to stay in hospital. Taiwan's Central Epidemic Center believes the current COVID wave will peak at over 100,000 daily cases in late May or early June. North Korea reported over 230,000 new cases of what the country's state media is referring to a fever on Wednesday. The cases are widely understood to be related to COVID-19 after the country confirmed its first outbreak of the disease last week. North Korea has sent 3 planes to China to pick up medical supplies, according to South Korea's Yonhap news agency. Seoul has also offered to help Pyongyang combat the virus, but North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has yet to respond. North Korea's population remains largely unvaccinated. Kim has mobilized the military and ordered pharmacies to open 24 hours a day in a bid to tackle the outbreak. Coming up, heroes or war criminals. The fate of Ukrainian soldiers who've surrendered to Russian forces in Mariupol hang in a balance. Details after the break.
Welcome to Jason's Table, Shocked and Surprised. I really love the opportunity to get to share some of the most shocking and surprising but delicious foods here from Taiwan with you folks out there. Do you even know what this is?
These are chicken testicles.
Chicken testicles?
Yeah.
I think you got the surprise. Oh, I heard it first. Do you know what this is?
This is Stinky Tofu.
Some people say it smells like dirty socks.
I think it's egg.
I think the only way you can achieve that kind of smell, that kind of level, you would probably have to leave it for like a year or so.
So we got a good stinky tofu for you today?
It's great.
2 bowls of soup, which one is the most expensive? In Taiwanese beef noodles, there are different types of broth bases. There is qingdun, which is a clear broth. There is hongsa, which is the soy sauce-based broth, and there's also one that has tomato in there. It's very, very tender, and then it still maintains the characteristics of the fiber of the beef. This bowl of beef noodle soup is $55 US. The most expensive dish on their menu is the $337 US bowl of noodle soup.
It's expensive.
It's expensive. Specialty of Taiwan, it is
珍珠奶茶.
Tapioca milk tea or bubble tea or boba. Boba are made from sea cucumber! And actually, in the news, this has been described as the worst food in the world. Jason's Table, Shocked and Surprised, is coming soon on TaiwanPlus.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. The World Health Organization's decision-making body, the World Health Assembly, or WHO, may soon discuss whether to reinstate Taiwan as an observer. 13 diplomatic allies have backed a motion that would give Taiwan observer status at this year's meeting, which is due to begin on Sunday. Taiwan has not been invited to observe the Assembly's annual meeting since 2017 due to Chinese objections. The United States and the group of 7 leading industrialized nations are also calling for Taiwan's inclusion in the WHO. Hundreds of Ukrainian soldiers who have left Mariupol's Azovstal steelworks face an uncertain future. The fighters have spent weeks hiding inside a factory, refusing to surrender to Russian forces. But Kyiv on Monday ordered the troops out. Ukraine is now hoping to get them back as part of a prisoner swap deal. But a top Russian politician is calling them war criminals and says they should be brought to justice. Scott Butler reports.
Exhaustion etched into the faces of Ukrainian soldiers. They've spent weeks defending Mariupol, a city in Ukraine's southeast, from advancing Russian troops. Now, their journey ends here, a surrender into the hands of Russian forces. As their buses head to Russian-controlled territory, behind them the Ukrainian troops leave the scorched metal of Mariupol's Azovstal steelworks. It was seen as the city's last pocket of resistance. From its tunnels, Ukrainian forces held off a Russian siege that lasted months.
Завдяки обороні, яку здійснюють оборонці Маріуполя, було не допущено перекидання противником угрупувань. Це близько 20 тисяч особового складу. Противник не зміг їх перекинути на інші регіони, і таким чином противнику не вдалося швидко захопити Запоріжжя.
Kyiv calls the captured troops heroes. Ukraine hopes the soldiers will come home through a prisoner exchange, but senior Russian politicians are calling them war criminals.
Вы правильно вносите предложение. Нацистские преступники не должны подлежать обмену. Это военные преступники, и мы должны делать все для того, чтобы они предстали перед судом.
Ukraine says it's still negotiating the soldiers' fate. Mariupol became a symbol of resistance during weeks of Russian attacks. It suffered months of bombardment, and thousands were reportedly killed. The fall of the Azovstal steelworks marks the end to one of the bloodiest battles in the invasion. Piper Yo and Stash Butler for TaiwanPlus.
Sweden and Finland say they will hand in their applications together on Wednesday to join a security alliance, NATO. The two Nordic countries have a tradition of neutrality, but they want to join the US-led alliance following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Russia sees NATO as a security threat and gave Ukraine's intention to join NATO as one of the reasons for its invasion. But NATO member Turkey says it is opposed to Sweden and Finland joining. Ankara accuses them of harboring people linked to groups that it considers terrorist organizations. Sweden and Finland say they are ready to talk to Turkey. Hundreds of smallholder farmers in Indonesia have taken to the streets to protest the government's export ban on palm oil. The ban was put in place at the end of last month to cool the domestic price of cooking oil, but farmers say it's threatening their livelihood. Indonesia is the world's top supplier of palm oil. Since the ban took effect, some oil producers have stopped purchasing palm fruits from independent farmers. McDonald's Taiwan has announced a halt to sales of French fries due to global supply chain issues. The fast food chain has yet to confirm how many of its Taiwan branches would stop sales, but the company says the side dish should be gradually added back on the menu from Friday. Sandwich chain store Subway is also reportedly running low on items like bacon and pickles due to production and shipping issues. Taiwan is a country that embraces religious freedom. Many different deities are worshipped by the island's inhabitants, often in front of a carefully crafted idol. We went to Yunlin County in central Taiwan to meet a man who has perfected the skills needed to bring these gods to life.
我叫做杨世明，在地北港人，今年34岁，从事神像这个行业将近20年。当初来选择做神像这个行业，是因为咱国中都还蛮读册，所以国中还未毕业，就想讲学一手功夫，都爱画图，所以才找在地的老师，一直学即嘛。了解尊神明上重要吼，一般就是爱了解伊的时代背景，伊的个性，人就爱对人客的需求来做调整。打踏入这个行业其实充满生气啊，等到你慢慢伊接触，你会愈感觉讲这是一个足深的学问。为以前到即马百尊，迄是每一个师傅一定拢会经历过啊。不过较有印象应该是第一尊彩绘的花道，因为迄阵阮头家伊讲人客伊要做较成土身，所以伊要用茶要拍做拿土身，伊的过程就相对困难。到我的手，我就做第一尊的彩绘，悬顶要几只龙，花草你甲分布，热安尼默默意画，迄阵靠耐性啦，一阵画落来就拢真古个。因为即马哦，近期艺术愈来愈侪，大家的转重拢愈来愈厉害，每一个人拢一直想要进步。伫这个时阵，咱要安怎去互看到？就是爱跳脱。伫咱做新的形象愈侪时阵，互我想到一个问题：古的形象，敢有人要拜？为什么有的人有迄个信仰是传承？少年仔愈侪愈侪新的，毋过老的怀古佛。就正做伊的开口，毋过因为年代的关系， 茶质加擦料，无法度冻久，胃肠会感觉有失落感，所以我毋才想讲要往这个方向来修复，互一寡老爸老的物件会当搁延续防腐师，嘛有伊的价值的存在。所以即马有一个方式，咱就是爱搁加反骨。啊，反骨这种物件就是互伊规个比例会敢会协调，袂敢身躯看起来就是足突兀的。啊，为当咱为个时势，好伊头请出来整修好，请倒去厝的。嘛，要是大人讲袂惊遐，讲啊，神明有请伊整理家啊，伊的人无在啊，还是讲换阵新的成灵。啊，所以咱甲反骨是为着要安定讲我的习惯，着要安定人心。
Thanks for watching TaiwanPlus News. I'm Betty Chen. Finally, today we'll leave you with images of the world's first pedalo championship in a Belgian capital, Brussels. For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, please download the TaiwanPlus app. Stay safe and see you next time.